Hey everyone, welcome to Tactical Magic Podcast. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I am here with a special guest today, someone who shares my passion for storytelling and is I think, shining beacon example of following your own healing journey and taking that into entrepreneurship and allowing that expansion to inspire others. So hang tight real quick. We'll be right back.
It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur.
Awesome. So Selina Novello is a young entrepreneur with many passions and interests. She has a podcast called One World, Countless Stories, and she's also in the social media marketing world and helps others share their voice. Not only that, she also created something called Force for Good Fridays, where she spreads kindness in the community. Welcome to the show, Selina.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor. I'm very excited to talk to you today. And like you said at the beginning, we have that shared interest of storytelling. So I'm excited to see what happens today.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your own story of, what did it take to become an entrepreneur, and, you're a podcast host as well. What's that sort of evolution been like for you?
Yeah, so it's a great story. So right now I'm 21 years old. So I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was 16. I started a business with my mom and we started selling jewelry together, which was amazing. But my story of healing and storytelling goes a little bit further back than that. So I'll give you a little bit of a background about me. So I was diagnosed with learning disabilities when I was really young. And throughout school, I really struggled, and they kind of were like, oh, she's fine. We're just going to push her through and see what happens. But along the way, my parents were a beautiful beacon for me, and they did everything in their power to figure out what was going on with me and how they could best serve me. And through all that, I had this mentality that was developed that I was going to persevere through anything that happened to me. The first time I failed, I was in kindergarten. I was very young. I actually failed kindergarten and had to redo it again because I couldn't memorize. My brain wasn't working properly. Nobody really knew what was going on with me, but I failed at such a young age and had to learn how to persevere, keep going, get back up after you fail, and push through. And that is all due to the challenges that I was born with my learning disabilities. And I'm honestly so grateful for them because, like I said, they have shown me how to keep going and never give up. And in my schooling, like I said, they just kind of pushed me through. And then eventually my parents were like, we want to get you the support that you need. So they got me tested privately. I got diagnosed with dyslexia, poor working memory, and anxiety, just generalized anxiety. And after that, I was able to go to a special school with kids with learning disabilities. And again, this further switched my mindset because for so long, I thought that I was stupid. I thought that my disability, I didn't know what it was, but I just thought that I was stupid. I couldn't do anything. But when I got to this school, it really taught me that my disability was actually my ability and my superpower and what made me unique, and that I could learn and do as well as anybody else. I just needed a couple more tools to get there. And I went through high school at this school, very small class sizes, and it got to a point where I felt very alone in my friend group, and there wasn't a lot of girls around me, so I just started feeling very alone. And one day, I stopped at this market, and this jewelry company called Origami Owl was there, and they have this young entrepreneur program where you can sign up and you start your own business underneath them. And I didn't really know. I was like, we'll see. And then me and my mom took that opportunity and we decided, we're going to go for it. And that's where my entrepreneur journey started. And then from there, I continued to get involved in social media and different marketing groups and figured out that I had a passion for helping others in social media, sharing the voices of others, and then also speaking my own truth and my own healing process and helping others along the way. Something that's really, really important to me is helping others and changing the world and giving people the permission to be vulnerable. And I do that by being vulnerable myself. So after high school, I graduated in 2020. So it was the COVID year.
Mm.
So I didn't have a traditional grad, and my high school career ended a little bit quicker than the average. And at the time, it was a little bit frustrating, of course. But looking back, I think that was one of the biggest gifts I was given, because all I ever wanted was time. As a very busy child, I did sports, I did singing, acting, anything that my parents could put me in, they put me in it. And so all I ever wanted was just time to rest. And I got it during COVID, because everything just stopped. It was just a hard stop. And along that, when I graduated, my goal was to graduate as the valedictorian from my grade. And I didn't make it because it went to like a student vote. So it became a popularity contest versus who actually deserves the award. And that was a really big hurdle for me to overcome, because once I realized I could learn, I expected a lot out of myself. And I was a perfectionist, and anything below like 98, I was disappointed. I was that kid who like, I got a 98 and I was upset, because in my head, it was not perfect. It was one thing that I got wrong, this close to being perfect, but not. And so when I didn't get valedictorian, it was really, really hard for me to kind of shift my mindset around it all and heal through that. And that was its own journey in itself. And I tell that because it really made me realize how much value I put on achievement. Mm-hmm. And that really shined through, that all of my value I put, all of my value was put on what I could produce and what I could achieve, instead of just I am enough simply because I am me, I am alive. And so it was a huge, huge healing process. And that is when I decided to start my podcast, start my YouTube channel, and start sharing my life, my story. And my podcast, like you said, it's called One World Countless Stories. And it's all about sharing individual stories so people feel less alone, but also heard. And I think that we have a lot to learn from each other. And that is what my podcast is all about, to talk about the challenges, how you persevered, what each individual does. And every time you listen to an episode, or I interview it even, I take something from it. Depending on where you are on your life, you'll take something different. But we're all these living beings with huge stories and past behind us. And they've made us into these beautiful people that we are today. And my podcast is all about honoring that. And yeah, so that's like a very long introduction. I jumped over a couple things. But yeah, that's like the most important pieces about me.
It's awesome. Yeah, I just want to like celebrate that perspective that you have of like the way that we're judged, or I don't know, the conclusions that are made about us at any point in life, especially by ourselves, like I just can't learn, or I'm stupid, that those are worth questioning. And that with the right support and new perspective, that all of that can change. And that, your value, in addition to we can completely change and evolve at any moment, that our value is not based on what we do or create or have done, but simply innate in our being, is like such an awesome thing to get by the time you're 21. I'm not awesome. Envious, but like I am. Like if I got that shit at 21, how different would my life have been? So like, wow, good job. Congratulations. And like, well done to your parents as well for being such a solid support system, because in different hands, who knows if you would have overcome those challenges as quickly or as early as you did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think personal growth and choosing to work on yourself is one of the hardest things that we will ever do as humans. And it's been a lot of hard work. And so it is something worth celebrating. And people who are on their own journey, it's really important that we take that time to celebrate, because so often we get lost in the, okay, what can I do next? How can I keep furthering? How can I heal more? But it's really great. And I thank you for celebrating that for me, because it's a great reminder that we need to do that more, because the work that we are doing and healing and going back to our younger child inside of us and healing that version of us as well, is it's not easy work. And when you decide to do that, it's just life changing. And I was put in an environment where I was exposed to personal growth at a very young age and saw that maybe things could be a little bit different. Maybe I didn't have to suffer as much as I did. And so I just wanted to add that. And yeah, it's huge about the environment and the support that I had. And I always am so grateful, because I would be nothing without my parents, as I love them so much because they have given me the opportunities that I needed. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that support can come from a lot of different places. Not everybody wins the parents' lottery necessarily, but having, choosing to surround yourself with people who are going to champion you in that way, who are going to like check in on you and want to support you and getting the support that you need. That can come in a lot of different forms, I think, for sure. Also, the aspect of the like opportunity for entrepreneurship, like you didn't seek that out. You weren't like, what, I'm 16, it's time to start a business now and like get my feet wet with making my own money. But I feel like when we're on it can be intentional, and it's also sometimes happens upon us. Like I fully started my business by accident. I did not intend to be an entrepreneur. I think I was always heading that direction, especially because I hated working for other people. But I didn't intend to do that. It kind of accidentally happened, and I'm so glad that it did happen. But you never know when you're on the path of healing, when you're looking at, who do I want to be now? What else is possible for me now? And you walk into some store and then boom, there's an opportunity that feels like, let me look into this. Like, let me see if I'm interested. And then you feel that resonant yes and move towards it. You never know what's going to happen and how that's going to unfold. And maybe you didn't need, if you were thinking, oh, I don't want to sell jewelry for the rest of my life, you might have been like, no, but let me try it right now and see what that shifts in me so that the next step becomes clear. And then it did. And the same was true for me. I started my business by accident as a hypnotherapist, did that for about a year. My younger self would have never thought I was going to be teaching business and marketing. Right. But because I was willing to take that first step and go into it and like fully immerse myself in what I wanted to learn about being that business owner, I suddenly found this knack for an interest in all these strategies and tools and processes and methods of growing a business that then people needed my support to do. And so it's like this organic, sometimes emotionally charged, but a progression of expansion that the road comes to meet you when you take that step forward. And when it pivots, you'll feel it pivoting and you can move in that new direction. So it's cool. I like that you had that experience. And also like the healing part, like you said, it's not easy. Like it's hard work. Yes, it is really hard work. And I will say, like, I had last night sort of an upsetting thing happen that my younger self would have completely collapsed from, that it would have been devastating. And I would have been grieving. I would have been making myself wrong, and it would have torn me up. And I allowed the emotion, like I felt it. I felt the grief. I felt the stuff come up. And because of the years of work, like the healing work that you've done and experienced, every time you work on something, and I don't think that we need to be working on stuff all the time. I don't think we need to be a work in progress. I think we are perfect in our exact current state. And anything that comes up to be healed will show up, and you can just choose to heal it or not. But it's a muscle that we build.
Exactly.
And as you build that muscle, you gain tools, you gain access to more awareness, you gain like the capacity for resilience that we didn't have when we were younger. And that it would have been great if we did, but it's a muscle that we can build so that when new shit shows up in our lives, we have that muscle we can lean on and use and actually come to the healed place or to the other state of being from there more easily, more effortlessly, like in a couple hours instead of a couple months, which is, it's
I mean, really when you look back and you think of a situation that just happened to you yesterday, and you think, if that happened to me 2 years ago, I would have reacted a completely different way. That's truly something to celebrate as well in itself, because, and like you said, we build these toolboxes, and as we work on that muscle, we just keep getting more and more and more tools to be able to cope and handle new emotions and new things that come up in our life. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is what you're talking about with, stumbling upon a business. It's exactly right. And when I was younger, I didn't realize how open I was. Now I'm definitely like, you need to have that openness, and new things will find you, and you have to be willing to be bad at things for a little bit too. I think that's something that's not talked about. I find for me, myself personally, and I know I'm not alone in this, is I look at my start point and I compare myself to somebody who has been in the business for 4 or 5 or 6 years. And then I was beating myself up, but I had to realize too in the whole journey, and this has become more and more prevalent in my life today, where sometimes you just have to allow yourself to be bad at things, because you can't expect yourself to be perfect if you've never done it before. And yet a lot of our minds are trained in a way where we're like, we just have to be able to do this right away. You weren't able to just do a podcast right away. There was things that led you to be able to do it. And there's just a bunch of different steps that lead you to where you will go. You don't really know what those are going to be, but being open and being willing to fail forward and just try new things and do new things without the expectation of I need to be perfect with it. I mean, it's been a big part of my journey personally, but I feel that's what it allowed me to have that opportunity. It's actually a funny story. I was on my way to hockey, and my mom was like, let's just stop at this market, like really, really quick, right? So there was literally zero intention of starting a business or becoming an entrepreneur in any way. And that decision to go pull into that market really quick before my hockey game completely changed the trajectory of my life. And it gave me new tools like we've been talking about. And I just think that having that open mind, and it takes a while to get there, of course. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do by any means, but everything is a choice. And you get to choose to be open or to be closed. And sometimes it hurts to be open, but it is really, really rewarding when you choose to be vulnerable and open. And just, when a door closes, I believe when a door closes, another one will open, and maybe it's greater, and maybe it will align more with what you need at that time. So I wanted to add that on to what you said as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally true. And yes, to the perfectionism thing too, because comparing yourself to anyone else is completely irrational. It doesn't make any actual sense. But comparing yourself to who you were yesterday is how you can start to acknowledge the growth that you're making. And it's so, so true that you can be great at anything, but you're probably going to suck at it first. And if you're unwilling to suck at it, then it's harder to get to the part where you're great at it.
And it's hard to do that though, because like it's very
our
difficult.
Egos say we shouldn't, we can't, lose face, but we have to in order to be in the process of mastery. We have to start where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a beautiful experience. Like just recently I started doing these Zumba classes, which is just like exercising and dancing for anybody who doesn't know. And the first time I went, I immediately started to compare myself to the person in front of me. But what was different than what I normally do is I actually stopped it. I was like, hold on a minute. I don't know where this person's been. I don't know how much she's done this. It's clear that she's probably done it a little bit more than me. So why am I even comparing myself to her when I should be celebrating her because she is good at this? And I look up to her that one day I'm going to be able to dance just as good as her. And that was where that really spoke through for me just in the recent new year, because I was like, I sucked the first time. And I was like, if somebody was recording me, it would be the funniest thing to watch, because I love to dance, but I'm not that coordinated. So it was just another thing where I was like, again, you kind of see like, wow, I would have treated this way differently. But now I have more control over my mind, my thoughts, my feelings, and I can recognize when I start to go down those paths of unhealthy patterns, things that I used to do in the past, and I can just bring them to a stop and be like, hold on a minute. Let's really analyze what's going on. And I kept showing up and I kept doing it. And every time I just keep getting better and better. Yeah. And it's a very recent example in my life where that has shown up. And I think it's a beautiful lesson to learn in itself, and everybody will learn it at its own time, because I've heard it so much before that. I knew I shouldn't compare. I knew, but for my own self, I needed to learn it in different ways.
Totally. Yeah, we all come to those realizations in their own perfect timing. And sometimes we have to learn them over and over again before it really lands, for
Yeah.
sure. Sometimes I actually like going back to like early, like the first year of my business when I finally made my first video or first Facebook Live, how uncomfortable I was, how fucking terrified I was.
Yeah.
And how awkward it was. And like, oh my gosh, it was a mess. But how great is it to look at that video as like the contrast between how I am now when I show up on video? Like complete change, complete like difference in my energy and my confidence level, my comfort, my capacity to speak the way that I mean to speak and say what I want to say. Like that is again, it's a practice in, you know, becoming who you want to be. And one step at a time, you got to start where you're at and move towards what's that skill set, what's that next thing, what's that capacity that you want to get better at. And at some point, you'll notice that you're way, way better at it than you used to be. And that's a really satisfying thing to acknowledge.
It really is. And you truly just have to start. I think there's that block to just getting started. And it's scary because there's fear of judgment. Like, what is everybody going to think? And all these things. But the moment that change happens is when you decide to just start. Because as much as it is not, it is truly your choice. I do believe that you could change your life tomorrow, because you just make the choice to make things happen, do things differently. There's a quote that I love. It's like, how does it go? If you don't like the results, change the approach, something along the lines of that. Nice. And so it's really like taking that time to reflect, which in this busy world that we have in social media and Netflix, there's so many things that are competing for our time, but it's so important. What I found very beneficial is taking that time to reflect and ask, what do you truly want from your life? What legacy do you want to leave, if there's anything you want to leave? And it's been a long process. And for me, right out of high school, I went to university for business, and I kind of did it because I was going to travel, but didn't make sense because of COVID. So I was like, the most reasonable thing is to go to school. And I did it, and I did really well, but I didn't feel fully aligned. So then I decided to take a year off. And this was really, really hard for me because it's going against the social norms, because there was huge pressure, and there's huge pressure in the high school system that when you graduate, you need to go to post-secondary. And so this for me was huge, going against the grain, taking a different path. And it was one of the best years, but also the hardest years of my life. And the contrast was just so beautiful in itself. And I finally got to travel. I went to Europe and I solo traveled, and that was a beautiful experience. And why I'm talking about this is because we forget to ask ourselves, what do we want? Not what, if you're younger, what do your parents want? And even if you're older, what does your parents want? What does society want? We just get blurred. What is social media telling me that I want? We get so blurred by all these things and all these other opinions, but at the end of the day, it's truly, what do you want? And we don't ask ourselves that question enough. And I started asking myself that question. It was hard because I was like, what do I truly want? And after I traveled and took a year off, I ended up going back to the same university for another semester, which was just like this last semester. So like the last semester, so the last couple months of 2022. And I went back and I was like, I'm just going to go and give it my go. I love to learn and grow, but I still didn't feel aligned, and I still was there for not the right reasons. And I truly didn't want to be there, but I was pushing against it because I was trying to reframe it in my mind. Like, this is a learning experience. And I don't think it was a waste of time at all, because I learned new things. But it's just, I was so busy on making sure that everybody else around me was happy, instead of making sure that I was happy and that I'm doing what I want to do. And I think that it's really important that we take that time to reflect and ask yourself, what do you want to do? And for me personally, at my age, I was like, I was 20 and I was like, I'm running out of time. I had this like scarcity, and I was like, hold on a minute. Like, no, I'm only 20. But also, if you're 30 or 20 or 40, you're still very young and you have lots of life to live. And at any point, like, you're never too old to start a company, to start a business, to start doing something that makes you happy. And that's like another piece of my journey where I'm on right now, is just figuring out what makes me happy, what do I want to do, and how can I make the greatest impact while doing that.
I love it. You're super inspiring. I hope everyone out there listening, first off, ask themselves that question. What is it that I truly want? And second, shares this with anyone who they know who's maybe in their college years or high school years, because you have a really, I think, important message for young people to be listening to too, that you have choice. Like, the plan, the trajectory that has been laid out before you is probably seems really solid, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, and that you get to carve your own path. I finished university. I went to University of Oregon, but then I was like, I really didn't know what I wanted either. The only thing I knew that I was passionate about was traveling. And now I'm 15 years later into being nomadic. Turns out I found my path and started a business, and all kinds of fun stuff has been created. But yeah, it took me a lot of years of traveling to figure out who is it that I want to be and how do I want to show up. And then whoops, and now I'm a business owner. So what does that mean and how can I do that really well?
Yeah, exactly. And I thank you for saying that. And I think we're so stuck in this right or wrong path, but there's a million different paths. And in your example, in your story, what you just shared, I truly believe that what is meant for you will find you. And so just because your path doesn't look exactly like someone else's, it doesn't mean that yours is wrong, or it doesn't mean that yours is right. I truly have this passion inside of me to share that message, because I've been in a place where I've been so confused, so consumed by what everybody else wanted me to do. I wanted to please. I was definitely a person pleaser. I wanted to please everybody around me. And there was like lots of blocks. There was lots of blocks that I had to get through. But really a big mindset shift for me that really helped was that no matter what I do, what is meant for me will find me. And you just have to believe that within yourself. Like, I could say it here, but you have to truly take that and believe it yourself, for it to find you. And that's like what I believe. But in what you just said with your story, you found traveling and what was meant for you on your own timeline. And so I just think it's an inspiring journey we all get to live.
Yeah, I think if we're willing to be curious and take one step forward, the next step will seem a little clearer. And I think a lot of people do get stuck in, when I know for sure what it is, I'll take action. And it's like, okay, well, what if you just followed your curiosity instead? What's one thing that interests you? What's one thing that feels fun to you? And like, how can you go down that rabbit hole 1 or 2 steps? And just see what it turns into. It might be a different rabbit hole. It might be something that has nothing to do with, your profession or career. It might just be like a hobby that gets spurred, but that adds more joy or magic to your life. Like, it's worth being curious and exploring when the status quo is, doom scrolling and Netflix.
Yes. Yeah.
There are other options out there.
Yeah. And also, like, I think you have it right on the nose. Like, staying curious is such an important part. And I feel like as I've watched a lot of people around me who are older, they lose that curiosity. They lose that joy in themselves, and they almost lose that childishness to themselves as well, because you have to behave and act a certain way. But I truly think that when you do stay curious and you're willing to push yourself outside your comfort zone, because that's where it gets tricky, because it's going to be uncomfortable, but so much growth happens outside of your comfort zone. For example, in my life, traveling solo, I was so scared because I'm told as a woman I was going to be unsafe, and that I was really filled, a lot of people around me, also myself. I was afraid, but I knew that that was something that I needed to do. And you can't live outside of your comfort zone all the time, but pushing yourself and putting yourself in situations where this is going to make me a little uncomfortable, like maybe taking that first step in your entrepreneur journey or whatever it is, it's going to be uncomfortable, but just knowing that there's growth that comes from that is so important. So pairing that, like pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and staying curious, is like a beautiful match where you'll find growth and new opportunities for yourself.
Yeah. Pure magic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so inspiring, Selina. Thank you so much, A, for being on the show, and B, for sharing your message and your story and your magic with the world. What are the best places for people to follow along and get a hold of you?
Well, thank you to say the first best way to find me is on Instagram, and I'm Selina_Novello. And you can find me on all social media platforms at that username. So I'm on TikTok. I also have a YouTube. If you love traveling and seeing fun videos, you're going to want to check me out there as well. And then, of course, the One World Countless Stories podcast on all streaming platforms. But other than that, if you ever want to connect, Instagram is probably the best place to do so.
Awesome. Thank you again for being on the show. It was super fun.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this so much.
Yeah, it was great. And thank you everyone out there for listening so much. If you enjoyed this show, if you thought this was inspiring, please share this episode with a friend. Definitely send it to any teenagers you know or young adults. I think this is a really powerful message for them to get access to. And of course, go follow Selina on Instagram and check out her podcast. We know you're a podcast listener if you're listening to this. Whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Tactical Magic. To find out more, please visit our website, wildheartsriseup.com. Be sure to take a second and subscribe to the show and come back next week for another edition of Tactical Magic.